Hello, this is T Chapman 500. Welcome to a new Factorio video, this time in Factorio 2.0 with the Space Age expansion. Here are the settings for the map, but before we dive in, I need to explain something that I'm doing. In the latest version of Factorio, some achievements will be disabled if I play on my preferred settings. For some reason, the Factorio devs want to punish more casual players like myself who don't play for the challenge. Basically, if I expand the starting area size, or slow down evolution, or slow down expansion, then some of the achievements are disabled. Speaking of achievements, here are all of the achievements I obtained from my 1.1 playthrough for anyone who's interested. This will probably include some achievements that didn't get included in the video for whatever reason. Back to the topic of the game disabling achievements for more casual playstyles, I created this save file in a slightly older version of Factorio that did not disable achievements. It still will for some parameters, but not for the parameters I use. Anyways, the first order of business in a Factorio playthrough is to always change the player color. After that, I quickly go to the achievement list to make sure that all of the achievements are indeed still available. Then I get to work demolishing the crashed rocket. Now that I have the absolute essentials out of the way, it's time for me to save the game and then update to the latest version. I'm taking advantage of the fact that the newer versions will not disable achievements for save games made in older versions. Here you can see which version I used to create the save file, and which version I updated to. I of course double checked that all of the achievements were still available before proceeding. Anyways, there's not really a difference that most casual players will notice between Factorio 1.1 and 2.0, other than maybe more rocks in the Green Plains. A lot more rocks. We also have these new trigger technologies, of which nearly every starter item is locked behind one of these. Basically, certain parts of the tech tree have been turned into a tutorial. Everything related to making steam power is locked behind smelting iron ore into iron plates. You also need to spend science packs researching radars and electric mining drills. Also, I'm tracking a specific achievement that requires me to launch a rocket without manually crafting any more than 111 items. You only need to manually craft 102 items in order to complete this achievement. You will need to craft one steam engine and one boiler, along with all of the parts used to make the steam engine and boiler, a lab and all of the components needed to make a lab, 10 red science packs and all of the parts needed to make those 10 red science packs, an offshore pump and all of the parts needed to make an offshore pump, a power pole and all of the parts needed to make a power pole, research automation as your very first technology, and finally an assembly machine once automation finishes researching. Then you type /permissions in the console, edit the default group's permissions, do a search for craft, and disable crafting. Just like that. You will now be unable to manually craft anything. Now feel free to stop tracking the achievement now that it's impossible to accidentally fail it. By the way, Factorio 2.0 has a few new achievements. Other than the trigger techs and the fact that electric mining drills and radars now need to be researched before they can be built, the base game of Factorio 2.0 is nearly identical to 1.1. Even with the Space Age expansion, the very early game is identical to the base game, which is nearly identical to 1.1. By the way, before you have automatic boiler fueling, I recommend you just pick up the assembly machine when you're not using it, or pick up the power pole. It'll save you a few trips having to refuel the boilers. One of the things I really like about 2.0 is the new blueprint ghost colors, though it does get confusing if you use blue belts or blue inserters or anything else that's blue. I also like how it shows the pipes correctly connected. And remember what I said about not being able to configure ghost entities in Factorio 1.1? Well, in Factorio 2.0 you can configure all ghost entities. By the way, a single offshore pump can now supply 200 boilers with water, and this blueprint has all 200 of them. By the way, map view now requires you to hold right click to remove a ghost entity. I don't like that. One thing I do like about the new map view though is the fact that it now sends construction and deconstruction requests instead of trying to actually construct or deconstruct something. In this playthrough, I had the foresight to make enough mining drills so that each ore patch could get at least one miner to start out with. Another thing I dislike about the new blueprinting system is the fact that objects that are in the way of your blueprints no longer take deconstruction priority over the blueprint itself. I forgot to leave room for the iron ore that I need to put on the bus, so all of these blueprints will have to be moved over, somewhat after I build them. With the tiny little detail that I neglected to put in a lane for steel plates, I planned out the bus a whole lot better this time. One of those lanes is reserved for solid fuel. Also note that in this run, I'm taking blueprints from a sandbox world, in addition to taking them from the internet. Here's the blueprint for green and red science production. Also notice how I laid out the circuit assemblers. I also made this in the lab. This has exactly enough labs to handle 150 science packs per minute. The only caveat to this is that we need to unlock maximum research speed. We're also stuck to using the labs on just one of the sides until we unlock medium power poles. It's at this point I realized that I didn't reserve a lane on the bus for steel production, so I'm going to repurpose the belt reserved for solid fuel. By the way, the steel axe is a trigger tech unlocked by producing steel plates. Oh look, we got a new achievement. Speaking of new achievements, I decided to go for the one that requires researching with another planet's science packs before unlocking yellow or purple science. If I so much as unlock the ability to manufacture purple or yellow science, I fail. Oh look, I'm tracking another achievement. This achievement involves not destroying any enemy structures until I do it with artillery. How hard can that be? Anyways, we now have military science. Would you believe I have 2 stone patches on this map and none of which can supply the stone bricks I need at the rate I need them? Anyways, we now have automated power pole production. And that was followed up by automating steel chest production. I forgot to record this, but it turns out that oil processing is a trigger tech. What this means is that I have to pump oil out of the ground before I can build oil refineries or chemical plants. Now it's time to research all of the remaining technologies that use only the red and green science packs. And I do mean all of them. Did I mention how I just love placing down pump jacks? This is pretty much the only part of the game that can't be automated. I'll need a lot of solid fuel to power my base, so this upgradable blueprint will provide all of the solid fuel I'll ever need. In theory. I also made a few mistakes with this blueprint which I'll have to correct. Anyways, now solid fuel production is up. This red belt is required to deliver all of the fuel that I'll need to power the base. Right now we're only producing a little over half of a yellow belt of solid fuel, but that's all we need. Interesting. Anyways, here's the blueprint for the blue science packs. It's bigger than the red, green, and black science production factories combined. Before I start up blue science production, I'm gonna need some rails. This blueprint will build absolutely everything related to rails. And right next to it is the new logic factory. Also, I'm starting to include lights with all my blueprints. And boy do I love the 2.0 rails. They're a massive improvement over the 1.1 rails, and there's not a single downside that I can think of. I also love all of the improvements made to train scheduling. There's just one small issue with it. The very specific feature I thought was included turns out to be missing. Unlike my 1.1 playthrough, for this playthrough I'm just gonna bring the crude oil directly to wherever it's needed and process it from there. Would you believe I had to watch a tutorial to get the train interrupts to work properly? And this is just the temporary solution. I have yet to implement that tutorial's workaround for the missing feature. Anyways, here comes blue science. Oops. Say, remember that nest I showed you a couple minutes ago? Well, I'm gonna steal Michael Hendrick's strategy for dealing with it without destroying any spawners. 9 turrets, it'll have to do. This is way too easy. Perhaps I should save the game before complaining about how this is easy. I found a couple more nests. Yeah, I think I'll pass. For now. And it turns out this one worm was irrelevant. And I just need 1 turret to make biters irrelevant. Again, this was too easy. Skip. Time to queue up some research using the blue science packs. And 1 hour of standing around doing nothing later, rocket silos are finished. It turns out that there's just barely enough time for me to get one of the speedrun achievements. Not the 8-hour one, I'm gonna have to settle for the 15-hour one, but it's an achievement nonetheless, therefore it's just a race against the clock. By the way, we now have blue circuits and electric engines. Cargo landing pad? Check. Low density structure? Check. Rocket fuel? Check. Rocket silo? Check. Space platform starter hub? I'm working on it. I really don't want to have to manually feed these machines. These spaghetti must grow. You might not be able to tell, but I'm just a little bit panicked about getting this achievement. Must go faster. Did you know that if you create a space platform using the map view, then a rocket will automatically launch when it's given a space platform starter pack? Guess how I found that out. Anyways, here goes our first rocket. I was in such a hurry to get this achievement that I didn't even bother making productivity modules, or efficiency modules. This may be anticlimactic, but the space platform's just gonna sit there in space for a while. Anyways, launching a rocket unlocks a trigger tech, and we got the achievement. Space science is another trigger tech that we need to unlock. And here's our first space platform. Before I do anything with it, I've got a factory to fix. Now that I'm free from the no crafting constraints, behold, robots and tanks. I really need an iron expansion. But first, we need more power. A lot more power. Efficiency modules. Iron expansion. Attempted logistics storage. I should have started recording this segment before I destroyed all the worms. Radar stations, which have the ratio of accumulators to solar panels swapped. More trains. Oops. Space platform related stuff. I'll explain what those do shortly. To unlock space science, we need to deploy an asteroid collector on a space platform. Space platforms can only be built remotely, but they build automatically if they're given the proper materials. This asteroid collector will unlock space science, but it's gonna be a little while before we can actually start making space science. Just by shift-clicking the objects that you want to build, you can build out your entire space platform. There are only 3 conditions that have to be met. 1. The object that you want to place has to be in the space platform's inventory. 2. If it's adjacent to existing space platform tiles but not on space platform tiles, then the space platform needs to have space platform tiles in its inventory. And 3. There can't be any holes in your space platform. Anyways, collecting asteroids won't do very much good if we can't process them, so here's an asteroid crusher. You will need one of these for each type of asteroid that you want to process. In this case, there are 3 types of asteroids that we need to process. Oh, and we have to tell the asteroid crushers what asteroids to process. To save on rocket launches, you can send copper wires up to the space platform and have the space platform smelt the iron ore collected from metallic asteroids into steel plates. It'll be slow at first, but you won't be dependent on rocket launches for space platforms. Also, filters on your inserters are absolutely mandatory in Space Age. Space science takes carbon, ice, and iron plates to make. And it only takes 3 Tier 2 assembly machines to get 90 science a minute. Provided you have at least 12 asteroid collectors spaced optimally. Every rocket that we launch costs 3,000 copper plates. A single rocket load of copper wires costs a total of 5,000 copper plates. But 4 rockets of 50 space platform each cost a total of 14,000 copper plates. So big thanks to whoever came up with the idea of sending copper wires to build out the space platform on the space platform. And sorry I can't remember who you are. I'll extend this platform to eventually have up to 12 asteroid grabbers. 6 facing north, 6 facing south, and all of them spaced optimally. Eventually, I've buffered up enough space science to start queuing up the research. We're gonna need better efficiency modules and better productivity modules, as well as better logistics. And just like that, all of our labs are once again fired up to full capacity. It won't stay that way for long, trust me, but at least right now we're getting 200 science a minute. Copper expansion is up. I somehow thought that having trains turn right to go into the station from the entrance would have been a good idea. All it did was result in this abomination. I'm gonna make sure I have good radar coverage around my base before going off to Volcanus. I'm also gonna surround my entire base with a wall. This is going to take a while, but so will building the space platform that'll get me to Volcanus. Uranium processing is another trigger tech that's unlocked by mining uranium. I still can't do what I want with it because as far as this playthrough is concerned, purple and yellow science are locked behind Volcanus. Oops. I suppose it would help if I added a departure condition. Anyways, here's uranium processing. And these are the last two technologies I can research until after Volcanus. Speaking of which, let's see how the Ranger's coming along. Oh, slowly. A very, very long time later, the Ranger finishes. While the Ranger is being loaded with starting supplies for Volcanus, I completed uranium processing. I have productivity modules in every step along the way, and one of the mining drills is already out. I was hoping to use the uranium rounds to take out demolishers, but that's locked behind one of the science packs that's locked behind Volcanus. Anyways, now that the Ranger's supplied, all we need to do is board it ourselves and head off to Volcanus. Rockets can carry either the engineer or cargo. Your inventory, including ammo slots, must be completely empty before you can board a rocket. But you can bring your armor and weapons with you. And I just love the new transitions and animations. Being on a space platform, including a mobile space platform, forces you into the remote view. You won't be able to leave the remote view until you land on the surface of a planet. Also, check out how crazy prepared I am for this trip. Or more accurately, how crazy prepared I think I am. In the game's code, space platforms are essentially just trains. In space. Trains that you can't manually drive, that is. As you get further from Novice, you'll start encountering bigger asteroids. These are called medium asteroids, and when you shoot them, they break up into small asteroids, and when you shoot the small asteroids, you get asteroid chunks. Failing to arm your vessel before leaving Novice orbit will result in the complete destruction of your space platform and all of the resources on it. After a couple minutes, we've arrived at Volcanus. I've pretty much immediately sent down the cargo landing pad. That'll be used as the destination for everything else I send down to the planet. And finally, we go down ourselves. Oh look, another achievement! Welcome to Volcanus. I waste no time in picking up that landing pad, which, by the way, has a built-in radar, and I'm going to use it to my advantage. These worms are called demolishers. They come in 3 sizes. This is a small demolisher. They literally don't care about you unless you attack them. By the way, heat-based weapons have no effect on them. They also don't care about your factory unless you start building it in their territory. And of course, what better way to provoke it than to use the very thing I need to receive supplies from orbit. There's also an achievement for provoking the creature. One of the new resources in Space Age is called tungsten. It's usually buried deep inside demolisher territory, but for some reason this patch is not. What is buried inside demolisher territory in this instance is any path I could use to belt the tungsten back to my base. And belts cannot tunnel underneath lava, so don't even try. Volcanus also has these sulfuric acid geysers. You can get sulfuric acid directly from these geysers by placing pump jacks on them for infinite sulfuric acid. Another resource you're introduced to on Volcanus is calcite. Anyways, after revealing the entire starter area, I decided to put the cargo landing pad just north of the coal patch. Time to start sending down some supplies, starting with the cargo bays. And I waste no time building the cargo bays to make sure I never run out of cargo space. In theory, I should not need any more shipments from Novice. All of the trees on Volcanus are charred, and as a result, all of the wood has been turned into carbon. Some of these trees are permanently on fire, and removing the tree creates even more fire. So be careful. Mining one of these rocks gives you tungsten, and also starts unlocking the Volcanus tech tree with trigger techs. And now to send literally everything else down to the surface. Of course, I'm not gonna have the Ranger just sit in orbit doing nothing. I'm gonna send it back and forth between Novice and Volcanus to gather resources to ship down to both planets. Also, get used to kickstarting your factories on other planets using solar. Solar is much more effective on the surface of Volcanus than it is on the surface of Novice, by the way. I just love placing pump jacks. In spite of the fact that this ice is exposed to the harsh environment of Volcanus, it will never melt. This setup is unnecessary as you can get water from sulfuric acid using calcite. Combining sulfuric acid, carbon, and tungsten creates tungsten carbide. It also unlocks the foundry. The foundry can only be crafted on Volcanus but can be built pretty much anywhere, and has a built-in 50% productivity boost. I should have mined at least one piece of calcite while I was doing my scouting, because you need to mine at least one piece of calcite in addition to making at least one piece of tungsten carbide in order to unlock the foundry. Foundries are among the most expensive things in the game, but that expense is actually offset by the foundries somewhat. Unlocking the foundry unlocks the big mining drill, which is required to mine tungsten patches, and can also be crafted only inside foundries, and only on Volcanus. Now that we have our first foundry, we're going to use it to build the rest of the foundries that we'll ever produce. Not only is the foundry faster than the assembly machine, it also gives you a free foundry for every 2 foundries that it crafts. Big mining drills require molten iron, which we don't have access to yet. You get molten iron and molten copper from lava. You need foundries in order to extract the iron and copper from the lava. You also need calcite to facilitate the process. Guess what I forgot to account for? This process also produces a ton of stone as a byproduct, which we can use, but whatever's not used has to be discarded. Fortunately, we can just throw the stone into the lava. By the way, you get the lava you need by placing offshore pumps right on the lava. As you saw earlier, I don't need a big mining drill in order to mine calcite, but big mining drills are 5 times faster than electric mining drills and have a 50% resource drain. This effectively doubles the amount of resources you can get from a single ore patch. Another thing foundries are useful for is casting molten iron directly into gears. We'll also need a foundry to cast molten iron into iron plates. But you might have noticed by now that we can use foundries to craft belts. I actually ran out of belts, and so I decided to ship some in from Novice. But once these belts go up, I won't have to ship in any more. Actually, I didn't have to ship in any, I just panicked. I also ran out of refined concrete. Fortunately, we can get concrete by casting it from molten iron. We can also cast molten iron into iron sticks. Apparently, I forgot to record myself putting big mining drills on that tungsten patch up north. Anyways, I'm using bots to transport the tungsten from the mining drills to the base. Anyways, the Volcanus science pack takes tungsten carbide, tungsten plates, and molten copper. It also only takes 3 foundries to get 90 science packs per minute, and 5 foundries to get 150 science packs a minute. By the way, steam generation on Volcanus is way overpowered. I'm also beginning to blueprint my science production on Volcanus. All of our science will be taking place here for a little while. Yes, I'm using yellow belts because I don't need red belts for some things. I actually left room in these blueprints to replace the circuit assembly machines with electromagnetic plants once I get them. I accidentally pasted in the novice version of the blue science production instead of the Volcanus version. Oops. Time to make a Volcanus-specific version of the inserter factory, and I may or may not be planning something. I made a copy of this save, and in that copy I did a few tests and concluded that 50 gun turrets with 100 magazines each would be sufficient to kill the Demolisher. Also, I'm replacing the steam engines with steam turbines. Here's the main part of my Volcanus base with miscellaneous stuff spaghettied throughout. As we head north, you'll be able to see the tungsten mine, where the tungsten ore is delivered to the base via bots. And to the south we have the work-in-progress blue science production. In the test world, I put 50 gun turrets directly in Demolisher territory and put 100 magazines in each turret. That proved to be very effective, so 50 gun turrets outside of Demolisher territory with 25 magazines each it is. What could possibly go wrong? By the way, did I mention these things have insane health regeneration? Either you defeat them in seconds, or they defeat you in seconds. In the copy of this world I used for testing, I lost only half that many gun turrets. But I'm sure it'll be fine. With that demolisher out of the way, I can finally route a belt from the tungsten mine to my base. Looks like this guy's gonna miss my turrets. I'll fix that. No, the bots definitely should not be trying to repair those turrets. Come back, come back, come back. Okay, now it's chasing me, and I have no way to get off this planet. Not that it would help considering how fast it is. It would probably destroy the rocket silo before the rocket cleared it, which would also destroy the rocket and whatever was in it. Well, looks like this run is going to end early. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, and share, and I will see you in the next video. This is T Chapman 500 signing off. Wait a minute. It stopped chasing me. Oh, big mistake. Big mistake. As this moron peacefully returns to guarding his territory, I'm already plotting how I might take him down. I will have my revenge. Well, I completed the science production factory and I'm about to hook it up to the labs. Before you do that, here's a quick tour of my base. Also, I imported 6,000 space science packs from Novice while you weren't looking, along with 150 logistics robots. I also finally completed that tungsten belt from that mine. Anyways, let's get this thing rolling. There will be an initial burst of 200 science a minute while the science packs get consumed. I'm gonna make a slight tweak to the order in which the technologies are researched. I want coal liquefaction to come first, although it's not really gonna matter in the end, because I'm not even gonna use coal liquefaction until all of the science finishes. All except the blue belts, that is. And unlike Novice, where I have trouble maintaining even 90 science per minute, on Volcanus I will have no problem whatsoever. In fact, I won't even have any problems with 150 science per minute. And once I start researching the blue and yellow science packs, the science will briefly jump up to 290 science per minute. 200 on Novice, briefly, and a constant 90 on Volcanus. Since I'm not going to be using cliff explosives right away, it really doesn't matter that I'm researching it first. What matters though are the achievements. Now, about that demolisher problem. 100 gun turrets directly in its territory with 100 magazines each. Did you know you can put requests inside blueprints? Couldn't do that in 1.1. Once a turret with ammo request is placed, the bots will start fulfilling that request. Oh, it looks like I missed my window. There's no way I'm gonna try and do that with the demolisher right there. This requires a little bit of patience. Fortunately, it's only me that has to wait, not you. By the way, did you know that it doesn't matter where the demolisher is in its territory? It will always know when you place something in it. Good thing I discovered that here and not in one of the smaller territories I found on this map. By the way, I'm making sure to keep my distance so that if those turrets fail, it will not be able to come after me. This is what should have happened on the previous 2 attempts. By the way, once a demolisher is defeated, you own that territory forever. Anyways, here's what I have left. I only lost 13 stacks of ammo on this attempt. To get oil on Volcanus, you either have to ship it in from another planet, or use simple coal liquefaction. This takes coal, sulfuric acid, and calcite, and produces only heavy oil. With normal coal liquefaction, I need heavy oil, coal, and steam, no calcite, and I get heavy oil, light oil, and petroleum as an output. Since coal liquefaction needs to be bootstrapped with heavy oil, it's a good idea to store that heavy oil in a tank and make sure that tank gets priority. To supply the necessary steam, all I need is a single acid neutralization plant. If any of the oils back up, the whole process will stop. If the heavy oil runs out, the whole process will stop. I simply copied the logic from the advanced oil processing setup on Novice to here. It should be good enough. By the way, did you know that if a demolisher's territory is as narrow as a single chunk, then when it turns around it will actually leave its territory temporarily? You'll need to take this into consideration when you build right next to demolisher territory. Time to start producing cliff explosives. I don't really see a use for regular explosives right now. By the way, the use of cliff explosives is another new achievement in Factorio 2.0, but I think it might be one of those that's exclusive to Space Age. This is gonna open up a whole lot of the planet that I previously couldn't build on. Here comes purple science, finally. The Volcanus version of this build is currently the only one that's available. This will be able to supply 90 science per minute, assuming I have enough oil refineries and chemical plants, which I don't. I'll fix that after all of the purple science pack research is finished. For a little while, until we run out of plastic because we're not producing enough petroleum gas because we don't have enough chemical plants or enough oil refineries to produce the needed plastic, we'll be able to knock out those research nodes at a rate of 90 science per minute, even the ones that require the addition of space and metallurgic science packs. By the way, this is the last time you're gonna see the labs fire up until I get the yellow science up. By the way, we can now unlock green belts, but I'm just gonna leech the blue circuits that they need off of the yellow science production that I haven't built yet. Oh, and purple science is another achievement. Small demolishers are now extinct, but just look at the stats of that medium demolisher. Over 3 times the health, over 3 times the regeneration. I think I'll wait to start taking those on. Here's yellow science going up. While that's going up, I'm gonna queue up Fulgora. A burst of 250 science a minute is not quite as fast as I would have liked, but I'll take it. Green circuits are gonna be the bottleneck to sustaining 90 science a minute until I get the electromagnetic plants. Meanwhile, the Ranger is stopped at Novice, loading on a planetary starter pack for Fulgora. It's also going to drop electric mining drills off at Volcanus to be replaced with the big mining drills. And the foundries. My uranium setup backed up, but I haven't used it yet. Keyword, yet. I wasn't recording for the purple science achievement, but I was definitely recording for the yellow science achievement. Here's the blueprint I came up with for building rockets. I think it's about time we went to Fulgora, and no, I have not forgotten about the keeping your hands clean achievement. I could just import whatever I need from Novice to get the rocket silo built, but I've got a better idea. It just so happens I need electric motors for other things in order to make Volcanus truly independent. A long time later, the rocket silos are almost finished. There's just one tiny problem. The Ranger's still at Novice, waiting for space science. Well, would you look at that? Artillery is now finished. You know what that means. Here's the artillery production. It's actually more efficient to build the artillery on Volcanus and ship it to Novice than it is to ship the materials for the artillery to Novice. By the way, we also have lights on Volcanus now. For some reason, I need to give bots access to explosives if I want them to be able to deliver them to artillery shell production. Here's an expansion that's within my radar coverage. As you can see, we have to deal with medium worms, medium biters, and small spitters. I'm gonna update the logistics requests of the Ranger. There's no point in bringing red belts to Fulgora when I have access to green belts. And now finally we can get off this planet and start headed to Fulgora. I'm actually not gonna step foot on Novice. This animation will never get old. I wonder what's holding up artillery shell production. Oh, that's what's holding up artillery shell production. And since there's no way for me to fix it remotely, I'm gonna have to drop back down to the surface. Well, there's one way to waste a rocket launch. There we go. It'll take a while for the RoboPort to recharge, but it's fixed. Maybe this time we'll get to stay on the Ranger. Oops. Good thing I can fix it remotely. It'd be a shame if I had to waste another rocket launch for this. And we're finally on our way to Fugora. It turns out that Novice is on the way to Fugora, which is actually quite convenient because we can stop there to drop off the artillery supplies. We start dropping artillery shells down to the planet the moment we arrive. We're gonna need more inventory space in the landing pad in order to take imports from other planets. Anyways, now that we've dropped off the artillery cannons and artillery shells, we're off to Fugora. It'll be a while before those artillery cannons fire because the bot network on Novice is slow. I decided to disable auto-targeting on the artillery cannons because I wanted to make sure I got the achievement while I was looking at what was being destroyed. When targeting things manually, you have to right-click on the target with the artillery targeting remote. And now that we have the achievement, once I finally do step foot on Novice again, I can freely destroy nests. The biters will try to retaliate against your artillery turrets, but what are they gonna do? Time to move the artillery to the other side of the base. And while we're waiting for that, we can drop down to Fugora. Welcome to Fugora, a cold, bone-dry desert with nightly thunderstorms and no oxygen. Don't ask how I'm breathing. I'll send down a few starter items before I explain everything. So I landed right on top of a Fugoran lightning collector. It protects you, your bots, and your factory from lightning at night. If anything is outside of its range of protection, it gets a notification icon on top of it. Also, make sure the drop pods don't land on top of you. In order to get started on unlocking the Fugoran tech tree, you need to find one of these Volt ruins. We were actually pretty lucky spawning right next to one. Solar is pretty much useless on the surface of Fugora, so I'm gonna replace my portable solar panels with a portable fission reactor. Actually, I'm gonna replace them with 2 portable fission reactors. Mining the Volt ruins unlocks the recycler as well as the scrap recycling recipe. The lightning collector, by the way, is unlocked the moment you unlock the ability to fly to Fugora. Recycling scrap gives you a small chance of getting homium ore, and once you get homium ore from scrap recycling, you unlock homium plates and homium solutions. Homium is used for several things, including the electromagnetic plant and the Fugoran science pack. It's also needed in some form or another for your top-tier armor equipment. Fugora doesn't have anything like trees, but they do have rocks, and they also have these ruins. They also have these scrap patches, which are mined in the exact same way as the ore patches on other planets. One thing you should look for after finding a Volt ruin is a very large island. The space between the islands are filled with heavy oil oceans. These large islands are where you're gonna build the bulk of your factory. Even these large factories tend to be rather small, so you're gonna have to be careful with how you build your factory. Either make your factory small and less productive, or split your factory between multiple islands. I'm actually disappointed in the size of this island, but it'll be good enough for now. So I'll place the landing pad here and send all my stuff down to the surface. Some of the resources I don't have to send down, but I'm gonna send them down anyways. By the way, my artillery cannons are finally ready, so I set them to auto-targeting. Now I don't have to worry about anything. They will fire exactly enough shells to destroy their target. You're gonna need a bigger attack group than that if you want any chance of getting through my walls. Also, you can manually target anything that's slightly outside of the auto-targeting range. Resistance is futile. Oh look, now we have to deal with medium spitters. Or we would have to deal with them if they could even touch my wall. Anyways, back on Fugora, you'll find these tree-like structures which contain nothing but homium ore. I recommend you save up as much homium as possible because homium is rare and it's also needed in large quantities. Now let's talk about powering your Fugoran factory. The intended way is to build your own lightning collectors, put a power pole right next to your lightning collector, and surround it with accumulators. The best power poles for this job would be the substations. Solar power is fine too, but it's incredibly weak here. One of the things you get from recycling scrap is ice, which you can melt into water. You can also pump heavy oil out of the sandy oil oceans and turn that heavy oil into solid fuel to fuel the boilers. But that option won't give you nearly as much power as lightning collectors combined with accumulators. Now let's talk about recycling. When you recycle scraps, you basically get high-level materials such as blue circuits and low-density structures. If you want the lower-level materials, you need to recycle the high-level materials. You then use the high and low-level materials to build your factory, as well as armor equipment, science packs, and whatever else you might want to build. The way I decided to go about powering my base is basically the worst way possible because I did not know that we get access to lightning rods the moment we unlock Fulgora. Note that for larger Fulgoran factories, lightning on its own will simply not be enough to power the factory day and night. So you will need an alternative power source, such as steam. By the way, the optimal ratio is 10 boilers for every 3 chemical plants. Scrap mines twice as fast as any other ore patch in the game, so just these 2 miners is already almost a full yellow belt. But why settle for an almost yellow belt when I can settle for an almost red belt? These 4 miners will give 24 scrap per second. Anyways, if you want to unlock the electromagnetic plant, you're gonna need to make homium plates. In order to do that, you need to make homium solution from homium ore and stone, and also water. The electromagnetic plant cannot be crafted by hand, so you will need to use either an assembly machine or an electromagnetic plant. You will also want to craft exactly 1 electromagnetic plant inside an assembly machine and build the remaining electromagnetic plants that you need inside electromagnetic plants because of the built-in 50% productivity bonus. Like the foundry, the electromagnetic plant will give you 3 crafts for the price of 2. And that bonus applies to everything. The electromagnetic plant can build power poles, solar panels, accumulators, modules, electromagnetic plants, lightning rods and lightning collectors, circuits, and a whole host of other things that you can see here, including some things that are locked. Also, you're gonna need a ton of recyclers, and whatever does not get used in the manufacturing of end products must be recycled into oblivion. That includes the incredibly valuable homium ore. But to minimize the amount of homium ore that's scrapped, I recommend building large buffers exclusively for homium ore. By the way, you can make homium plates inside foundries, which you should always do. Fortunately, there's a way to upgrade the build without losing any of the precious homium solution. To unlock the Fulgora Science Pack, we need to turn homium solution into electrolyte so that we can make the supercapacitors. And this is really all that it takes. The ratios might not be exact, but it works, and right now, that's all that matters. Fulgora's Science Packs is called the Electromagnetic Pack, and it unlocks while I'm making the blueprints for the rocket silos. And by the way, Volcanus' Science Pack is called the Metallurgic Science Pack. And here's what happens when the player gets struck by lightning. Good thing I had a whole 100 hit points worth of shields. Sometime later I expanded my mining operations. We can never have enough scrap here. I also realized that I didn't have enough rocket fuel production to feed my silos. It takes 4 assembly machines to satisfy the needs of just 1 silo. I've also been doing a bit of exploring trying to find a suitable location to put my science production. This should be big enough in theory. Also, does Fulgora look gridded to anyone? Somehow I'm under the impression that Fulgora is going to be the easiest place to launch rockets from. But I'm not leaving this planet until I get 180 science packs a minute from it. Alright, live commentary. This is, a problem. So, I started work on getting this science up. I'm out of cliff explosives right now, waiting on some from Volcanus. And I've got the drop-off stations. I've got the rockets. This is a decently sized island that should allow me to get the target science rate of 180 science packs a minute. But the ranger is stuck waiting for supplies. Let me just bring some of these down to more reasonable numbers. Furthermore, while we're waiting on this, one of the reasons we're waiting is because this, for some reason, isn't producing enough to keep all of these rockets being continuously built. So this is the latest attempt to make the build fast enough to support all the rockets. I can see that we're not saturating these two green belts. We are saturating this red one, so that's good. Oh yeah, here's another issue. This is slow, and I'm kind of running out of space for building more. So, since I need the hard drive space anyways, and since I really can't make any other videos until this one is published, I'm gonna set this as a part 1, and maybe eventually do a part 2 when I get around to it. I'm gonna be fixing all the problems off camera. Oh, by the way, I built this thing to make space science packs around Volcanus. Gleba's getting one of these too. Anyways, hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, and share, and I will see you in the next video. This is T Chapman 500 signing off.